Hello everyone and welcome back to the Shack and part 2 of our Acorn A3000 series, and I may as well let you know straight off the bat that there's going to be at least a part 3, as I'm still waiting on a new battery to arrive, having been let down by my initial supplier, and I've had to go elsewhere. But there are some bits I can be getting on with, and I was also contacted by a lovely chap called Steve who's been through a very similar journey with his Acorn A3000 and has offered a load of advice and also sent in this little care package with a couple of bits to help out. So let's have a look what's in the box. Well, I can see there's a SCART cable in here along with some bits of paper and something lurking underneath as well. This first bit of paper looks to be the pinout for the SCART and Acorn RGB port, and it looks like either the lead itself or at least the instructions came from retroclinic.com. I've used them previously for bits on my Beeb and can thoroughly recommend them. This next bit of paper is a pinout of the A3000 serial port, which will come in handy if I need to hook up that interface to something, and now of course I feel I should. This cable doesn't have the phono cables to bring in sound to the SCART socket, so we'll have to add those, but this little beauty is a 1 meg memory upgrade, which will bring the machine up to 2 meg total. If that is, we can get it working. Here at the Shack, we'd like to give a big thanks to the sponsor of this video, my good friends at PCBWay. They'll be helping us out with our PCB fabrication needs and offer a very professional and high quality service for extremely reasonable prices. They can even populate your PCBs for you if you're tired of waving a hot iron around. There's a link to their website in the description where you can check out all of the amazing services they offer. Now back to the show. At the end of the last video, I knew I had some bits to order, some conversations to have and a lot of reading to do, so it all got dried off and put back in the case for a bit. But with Steve's care package, these new RISC OS 3.11 ROMs and this smally mouse interface, along with the battery I was waiting for Mr. Postman to deliver, I felt ready for stage 2. There's quite a bit to do before we get to the point of attempting to boot this machine up, of course, and you're probably wondering why I bothered ordering the RISC OS 3.11 ROMs when the current ROMs looked unaffected by the battery leak. Well, it's because I'm expecting a lot of problems, and RISC OS 2 is not very verbose in telling you what's wrong with the machine, whereas RISC OS 3 and onwards run through a nice power on self-test or post process, and hopefully through a combination of flashes on the floppy drive light and colours on the screen we'll get some indication of things we need to check and fix. But before we do any of that, we need to check the power supply to make sure that the board is getting the right voltage in the first place. The last thing we want to do is plug this in and destroy the board before we begin. So with our trusty multimeter in place, let's see what we're getting. Well, we're reading around 5.5 volts out straight from the PSU, which will probably result in around 5 volts by the time you take into account general resistance on the main board. The service manual states anywhere between 4.9 and 5.1 is acceptable, so we're in the right ballpark. While we're here, we'll also check the voltage being supplied to the floppy drive. And that's also coming in at around 5.5 volts from the PSU, so that seems fine too. Now, although everything seems to be reading okay, I still want to take a look inside the power supply to make sure we don't have any capacitors that are starting to bulge and to generally make sure that things look okay. And if not, we'll need to replace those bits before we send any power to the main board. These are not the sort of chips I enjoy fried. Once the cover is off the PSU, we'll disconnect all the cables so we can have a good look around, and I've got to say that this is a very clean and tidy unit, and there looks to be no unsightly bulges or even the merest glimpse of a leak, so I'm happy with that and feel safe enough to see whether this thing will power on. But before we do that, I want to swap out those RISC OS 2 ROMs with these more up-to-date RISC OS 3 ROMs, which will hopefully then give us some indication of any problems through the aforementioned post process. Now, it's important to note that at this point I haven't received a new battery, so there are incomplete circuits, so I'm not expecting anything at all to happen at power on, but we'll do this anyway because, well, we need to. We're using our trusty chip puller to remove the old ROM chips, and then, you guessed it, we'll line up the notch on the chip with the notch on the socket and pop the new ROMs in. Now, before we go any further, you'll have noticed that these ROM chips are a different size to the old ones. They now take up the entire socket, and because of that, we need to change a couple of jumper settings to tell the computer that there are different size ROMs in place. To do this, we have to remove these jumpers here on link 17, 18, 19 and 20 and reconfigure them so that on links 19 and 20, pins 1 and 2 are joined. And we want pin 1 of link 17 and 18 joined together, and also pin 2 of link 17 and 18 joined together. And while I'm here, I've changed these jumpers from the old black ones to these lovely colourful ones, so they're easier to spot. With that done, I feel like I'm brave enough to send some power through the board and see what happens. So it's in with the video cable, plug in the power and switch on. Well, as expected, there's nothing on the screen, but we can at least now check that all of the chips on the board, starting with the ones near to the affected area, are receiving power and the right amount. I'll drop a little bit of tape on each of the chips as I test them, so I know which ones I've already checked. And it doesn't take long to find the first issue. ROM 4 isn't getting its 5 volt supply, it's only receiving 3.5 volts, so that's a good place to start. Well, 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 look what Mr. Postman has brought me. And I know what you're thinking, that's another Varta battery. Yes, it is, and that's because I haven't decided on the final solution, and a better solution may have been on Acorn's mind as well. Do you remember that compartment I said was good for smuggling rebels past Imperial blockades? Well, that is in fact a battery compartment, but to my knowledge was never actually brought into use by Acorn during the life of the machine. So I want to do that, but I'm still deciding how. In the meantime, I'm hopeful that this brand new Varta battery won't immediately explode and cover us all in hot battery acid. It only needs to put aside its murderous intent for a couple of months. So to start fixing traces, we need to be able to see them. So it's out with a vacuum desoldering gun and it's off with all the parts from the affected area. We're going to rip them all out and replace them with new parts once all the tracks are replaced and repaired and continuity is confirmed. This is going to be a long job, so it will probably take me a few days by the time I've cleaned it all up, repaired traces and received the new parts in. Anyway, that's a meaty subject for the next video. For now, there's something that I desperately need to do before I get lynched in the comments again. Sort out the cosmetics. This thing is filthy. We'll start as usual with a nice soapy bath. And a rub down with one of Mrs. Retro Shack's finest tea towels. With all the dirt off the case, I'm really not sure whether we're going to need to retro bright this case. The colour seems pretty factory original to me. The keys and keyboard on the other hand look like they need a few days out in the sun, so out they go. We'll check back on them in the next video too. I'm confident we can get this machine working as there's nothing really irreplaceable in the area of the leak. Everything is readily available and the schematics and service manual for the machine are really clear. Okay, before I sign off today, I wanted to give a couple of little updates. Firstly, if you're wondering why you haven't seen me on camera for a few videos, it's because the studio is moving into phase 2, which is sorting out the lighting, yay, and having fixed cameras and microphones for key angles, which will again reduce setup and takedown time in production. Also, it's time to take a break from work of all sorts and do some relaxing, so video output is a little slower through July and August over the summer holidays, so I can have a bit of a break and see family and friends for the first time since this COVID thing started way back in the 15th century. If you're wondering what I'll be doing for fun, well, I got a drone for my birthday this year and I'm going to learn to fly that, or lose it immediately, we'll see. Anyway, once the holiday period is over, video output will be back up to its usual at least once a week, and there's lots of exciting things to come, including this. If you think you know what this is, drop it in the comments. Fair to say, it needs a bit of work. As always, thanks for watching, and if you like the channel, please subscribe and hit the bell for notifications of new content. If you'd like to support the channel, you can become a patron or you can simply buy us a coffee. Links to both are on the banner on the main channel page. If you'd like to donate something to the Shack, drop us an email. Please leave your comments below as we always love to read them. And until next time in the Retro Shack, it's goodbye from me.